following recording originates from Radio Eastern 98.1 FM's fortnightly financial and life planning segment. Welcome to FLP's Financial Life Planning Podcast. In this segment, we'll be discussing the importance of having a business protection strategy in place for business owners.
The topic is how small businesses can best protect the cash flow and the assets of their business long term through what we call key person protection strategies. So, no doubt we've got self-employed listeners out there, Russ, and or if you're not perhaps self-employed, you may know someone that is. So if you're a business owner, Russ, you're probably thinking, what is this key person protection you talk about, Tyson, and why should I set it up for my business? So firstly, what is key person protection? Well, what it essentially does, Russ, it protects the key person of the business against unforeseen life events such as death, disabilities, be it permanent disabilities or temporary disabilities, and other medical conditions like, say, your cancers and your heart attacks and strokes, those types of events. So why should you protect a key person against those events? Well, what you want to do, you effectively want to protect the cash flow of the business, because if this key person is unable to work, it's going to affect the cash flow of the business, which, as we know, is the lifeblood of any business. And there's a lot at stake. A lot of people rely on the cash flow of the business, not only the business owner and their loved ones and their family members, but also employees at large. So you need to give your business the best chance to succeed long term. It's really important you consider these strategies. And if you don't have it and you're forced to exit, what it does create, Russ, is a potential fire sale. So if you don't have the appropriate protection strategies in place, you may be forced to put the business on the market, and people recognise that you are perhaps selling at the wrong time, and they see there's an opportunity to buy.
Really, in that situation, you're trying to sell at the top of the market, so it could be a very severe one if you haven't got that backup.
Exactly. So another point is you want to safeguard your retirement plans as well. So from experience, what we've sort of found is when we talk to our small business customers and clients, we find that they sort of view their business as their superannuation plan. So by setting up these key person protection strategies, what you're doing in effect is not only protecting the business and the cash flow of the business, but also you're protecting your long-term wealth, which is your retirement plans.
Exactly right.
So what are we looking to protect against when we set up a key person protection strategy? Well, we're protecting against the uncontrollable risk factors. And I'll just go through a few stats that are quite alarming, and I'm not here to scare people, but this is the truth. These are the numbers that sort of support the need to have key person protection in place. So 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women are expected to be diagnosed with cancer before the age of 85. So there's, just based on those stats alone, there's a 50% chance a male would suffer a cancer by the age of 85, and a 1 in 3, a 33% chance for a female. So they're quite alarming stats, and if you're in business you tend to be in business over an extended period of time, and with those numbers stacked against you, you may be in a position where you're in a vulnerable position and you may suffer one of these conditions. So the whole idea with key person protection is to protect against these elements. Also, almost 2 million adults aged between 25 and 64 have had a disability in Australia. And also around 55,000 Australians suffer a heart attack each year. So the numbers are quite alarming, and we can't sort of hide from them, and we can't think that we are invincible. So it's really important we put in place these strategies to safeguard your business and your wealth, essentially. Just some more interesting stats too, Russ. Only 53% of small businesses have actually heard of key person cover. So I suppose today's a really good opportunity to, preach the message of what key person protection is and what it does, and also try to, encourage people. So if only 6% have taken it up, we need to try and encourage people to, speak to their advisors about, what is this key person protection? How can it benefit my business?
That's right. Well, a very important thing, and as some of the points that you've already raised would be raising alarms in some of our listeners' thoughts. But if you hadn't thought about it, perhaps time to have a little bit of a chat.
Exactly. So, I mean, for us, it sort of highlights the underinsurance problem we have in Australia. Not just when we think of underinsurance, we think of perhaps your personal and family protection strategies, but we've also, these stats here, just also look at it from a business point of view, with only 6% of Australian businesses actually have key person protection plans in place. So, one of the many things that financial advisors do, Russ, is work with their clients, particularly in this case their business clients, on setting up what we call business risk management plans. Okay, so as part of that, there's four major pillars that make up a business risk management protection plan. And what we'll do, we might take a quick break, but I'll just quickly summarise each of the protection strategies and then go into a bit more depth after the break. So the first major pillar is what we call is key person revenue protection, which looks to obviously protect the income of the business. The second major pillar is protecting the assets of the business, known as key person capital protection. The third major pillar is protecting the expenses of the business, known as business overheads protection. And the last pillar is known as protecting the shareholders' interests. So where there are two or more shareholders in a business, as part of the overall strategy we set up, or we as advisors set up, business ownership protection strategies as well. So we're talking about key person protection strategies, and I've just gave a quick overview as to the four major pillars that make up a business risk management plan. So I'm going to touch on the first one, known as key person revenue protection. Okay, so I just want to also clarify what is a key person. So a key person is someone who's critical to the financial well-being of a business and plays an important role in generating the revenue of the business. So without key person protection, disruption is caused and business revenue could fall. So the solution is, Russ, is to set up what we call key person revenue protection strategies against both temporary loss but also permanent loss of a key person. And having an income stream to replace revenue after the loss of a key person could mean the difference between business survival or business failure. So it's really important that businesses do consider these strategies. So in terms of temporary loss, in most cases, a key person in a business may suffer a temporary sort of illness or disability rather than a permanent disability. The stats show there's a 46% chance of suffering a sickness or illness before the age of 65 that results in 3 or more months off work. Okay, so the solution would be for temporary loss of a key person. So you're not permanently out of the business, but you may be out of the business for, say, a 12-month period. So one solution is setting up a key person revenue strategy, effectively known as, say, income protection for a business, where what you can do is you can set up a key person revenue strategy that pays a monthly benefit up to 12 months after 30 days of a key person being injured or sick and unable to work for up to 12 months. So effectively, to give you an example, business owner Phil owns a blinds company in Croydon. The business revenue is $1 million a year. Scott is a key employee and he's the best salesman of the blinds company in Croydon, and he generates, of the $1 million turnover, he generates $300,000 per year. So let's say Scott is unable to work for 12 months. He's had a serious car accident, and what this means to the blinds company and Phil, the business owner, he's lost his best salesman. Okay, so potentially he could lose $300,000, 30% of his revenue, if he can't find a suitable replacement. So a good way to protect against that is set up the key person temporary revenue strategy, where you can protect Scott's input of the $300,000 he makes to revenue, and the business can be insured for $25,000 per month, okay, of revenue, which is paid to them for a 12-month period. So the good news is that these premiums are generally tax deductible, so it is effectively an insurance premium. The policy is owned by the business, so it's not owned by the life insured. So the beneficiary, effectively, of this example here of the $25,000 per month, is the blinds company in Croydon. They get that $25,000 per month paid to the company as a result of Scott not being able to work for the 12-month period due to the car accident. The next form of protection is making sure we protect against the permanent loss of a key person. So this is as a result of death, a permanent disability, or a specific medical condition such as, say, a cancer or heart attack or stroke that means that the key person is not going to return back to the business. So in this case here, Russ, what we do as an example, so the example is that John runs a small engineering firm in Bayswater. Gary's a key employee with the business relying heavily on Gary's networking skills and technical skills in the business. And John sort of worked out that if Gary was forced to exit due to poor health, it'll take up to 12 months to find a suitable replacement. So the advice would be, and what an advisor would do, is work out and sit down with John to say, hey, what's the impact of Gary being out of the business for 12 months? You've sort of indicated it's going to take 12 months to find a suitable replacement. And in this scenario, John's worked out that net profit will fall by $200,000 as a result of Gary not being there. There's going to be a cost to replace him. It's going to be, we've earmarked $25,000 there. And there's going to be a cost to then train the new employee, which is another $25,000. So in this case here, there's $250,000 can be paid to the small engineering firm in Bayswater for the loss of, or the permanent loss of the key person being Gary. So just a real another real effective way. So how this differs from the temporary loss, the permanent loss means obviously that the key person never return. So in this scenario here, rather than getting paid a monthly distribution for up to 12 months, you actually get paid a lump sum benefit, in this case $250,000.
Well, that'd help a lot, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah. Look, it's all relative to business revenue, and that example is relevant, to John being the small engineering firm. But obviously, numbers would adjust as per your circumstances. Now, the second major business risk management strategy is known as protecting the capital of the business, or business assets effectively, through key person capital protection strategy. So what you find, Russ, many businesses will borrow money to expand or grow their business during some point of the business cycle, okay? And effectively, to protect against the loss of a key person and the debts borrowed, what you can do is set up now what we call a key person capital protection strategy. So to give you another example, it's probably easy to explain this way. If John recently started up a small printing business in Kilsyth and borrowed $250,000 from the bank to purchase printing equipment. So in this case here, what we can do is, what an advisor can do is set up what we call a key person capital protection strategy for $250,000 and cover John in case of his death, in case of him becoming permanently disabled, or in case of suffering a cancer, heart attack, stroke. So effectively what this does is, in the event that John was to suffer one of those conditions, what you tend to find is when you set up a loan with a bank, the bank manager's actually got the right to request the loan to be paid out if John is a guarantor for the loan, because there's been a change in circumstances. So in that event, if John didn't have the key person protection strategies in place, he'd be forced to sell business assets. So effectively, by setting up this key person capital protection strategy, we've created a revenue source, or a lump sum benefit funding source, to pay out the loan to the bank without the need to sell business assets.
No, well, it certainly would reassure somebody who's just setting up a business, and there's always a worry, isn't there?
I mean, the most important thing to do is make sure you find ways to cover your debts. That otherwise you'll find yourself in a real difficult situation. The third business risk management strategy, Russ, is protecting against your business expenses. Okay, so what you do here is effectively through business overhead protection strategies, you can actually set up, similar to the first strategy, the key person revenue strategy, you can set up a monthly benefit for up to 12 months to cover all your expenses. Okay, so if you think of if you're a sole trader, for instance, and you can't work, well, there can be expenses that you need to pay for, such as rent, obviously, cleaning, electricity, gas, utilities, all those types of expenses. There'll be other insurance premiums. There'll be loan repayments potentially, advertising. So any fixed expense can be covered through business overheads protection strategy in case of sickness or injury. So this is more, again, the temporary loss. So this will be very much targeted towards sole traders. Again, this type of strategy is tax deductible for businesses to make it a little bit more cost effective. The final business risk management strategy, Russ, we've got a bit more time before 12:30.
No, you're right. Yeah, keep going.
Is known as the business ownership protection. Okay, and this is where, let's say, Russ, we're in business together. We own 50% share in the business. So what we need to do is protect against the unforeseen events in case of death or becoming permanently disabled. So what you do in this situation where there's two or more owners of a business, you set up what you call a buy-sell agreement, okay, which is funded through insurance, okay. So what this means is the buy-sell agreement, which is a legal document, gives the legal right to sell your ownership at an agreed valuation and is triggered by a life event such as death or a permanent disability, okay. So let's say we didn't have this buy-sell agreement in place and we're in business together and I pass away. What happens is my estate or my wife will then be a 50% owner in the business. Now, my wife might not know anything about the business.
She wouldn't want to work in it.
She wouldn't want to work in it. And she may cause problems for you in terms of if she doesn't understand the business and she's suggesting we do this and that, and it's totally against the philosophy of the business. So an effective way to make sure that we have a clean exit as a result of a pretty serious life event and to allow my family to be able to receive some proceeds from the business without actually having to sell the business and allowing you to continue in the business is to set up a buy-sell agreement that would have some death and disability proceeds attached. So in this case, as the business is worth $1 million, we would be paid $500,000 for our share, and the advantage of that too, Russ, is that it means that you, as the other director, you don't have to find the $500,000 to buy my share out. It's the insurance policy that effectively funds your own exit effectively in an unforeseen event. So it's a really effective way to make sure there's a clean exit, and it doesn't allow for perhaps other parties to be involved in the business that perhaps don't know too much about. So in that case, it's really important you do seek legal advice. So a legal representative would need to be involved in the process to set up the buy-sell agreement. Your financial advisor would become the project manager effectively and would sort of arrange all the setup of the insurances and would coordinate through the legal firm to set up the buy-sell agreement. So, it's really important that if you are in business with someone, you consider those implications. So just to finish, Russ, if you are a small business owner or you know of someone that is, just some questions you should ask yourself or ask the small business owner that you may know of is, who is the person who is the firm heavily relies on? Then pose the question, what effect would this have on the business if this key person was unable to work for a period of time or is forced to leave the business due to sudden death or a permanent disability? And the last question is, what steps do you have in place to protect against your business from events like this happening? So just some questions to really ponder. It's not something that we all like to think of. We want to obviously keep a positive outlook on life and not think about the negative consequences that are fairly common based on the numbers. But it is reality, and we need to be, when developing business plans, we need to allow for all circumstances and all situations. So I do encourage you, if you are a business owner or if you know of someone, really have that conversation. Ask yourself those questions. Speak to your advisor about, the items we spoke about today, and they'll be able to put you in a really good place in making sure that you're protected if the worst thing did happen.
Thank you for listening to this edition of Financial Lifestyle Partners podcast. Please note, the information provided in this podcast is of a general nature and does not factor in your personal circumstances. If you require any assistance with your own financial life planning needs, we would welcome you to contact our office on 03 9873 4000.